we have to get back to classical culture. We are thankful to Pandit Ji. Thanks to the emphasis we got our renewal with Hindustani music, with Carnatic music, and we renewed our bonds with our ancient traditions. But the fact remains that the people had invented a motley culture, a popular culture for themselves. And this one came in the city of Bombay. I have a theory about it. It started with the city of Calcutta, they started parallelly. Why the Bombay moved on towards becoming the vast cultural denominator of India, whereas Calcutta couldn't, depends, it is related to the fact that culture of the elite Bharati in Kolkata had insulated itself from its folk roots. Turning everything of the village as Naya, primitive. Any name that didn't fit in with the Banerjee Mukherjee Ghosh, Dr. Sengupta model, any name would be held as Uttarakhand. So there was this insularity about the Bharati culture with its two binary poles, one of a missionary leftism to eradicate poverty from the world and to think of world revolution, and the other on a strong nationalist bent. But whatever way it, fact is that it walled itself off from folk culture. So much so that folk culture started developing within the city. Within the city of Calcutta, you had Shongen Nach, Chanta and all sorts of things developing, but folk culture was taken to be untouchable. The same film industry in Bombay imbibed every folk element it could. Every element of the folk that it could. It took in Nautanki, it took in Lavani dance, which would be viewed term as obscene. It took in the Goli dance, Bobby. It took in Tamasha. And this together, the leaching, the seeping of the ecosystem into the cultural pot would strengthen its popular roots. It imbibed a language that was strangely of that of the footpath, Lafra. It got into itself a linkage with society at large and did not isolate itself in its mission. Anyway, having said that, the idea of India was got together, and I can say that as a student of history without any doubt with Professor Suranjan Das, a scholar of modern Indian history, but when he looks at the unpleasant side, riots. But that India's bonding in the second half of the 20th century, if you look at a single factor, it is Hindi film music. A single factor. Many other factors can be taken together, whether we understand it or not, and it's been contributory, whether it's been Gita or whether it's been any southern singer, whether it's rap based or whether it's popular tune, it doesn't matter. Hindi film music. And this was started through Bharati. Radio Ceylon was centered in a few cities, but when Radio Ceylon started hitting and All India Akashvani hit back through Bharati helped to spread music, the same, what shall I say, mixed up music, popular entertainment, from every nook and corner of India. You could see the troops in Ladakh hearing that, the same Hindi music. And then through Anuradha show and all sorts of things, talking shows, my Kubri Raisa go around, that sort of thing, you enhanced and extended that part of the culture. The framework was moving on through the airwaves, magnetic waves. Media stood up right from the beginning for the common man. There are hundreds of examples, and later on, from the 60s, with the spread of irrigation and a little bit of more economic facilities to the second and third lands, it would become a source of empowering citizens. I remember my days when one particular leftist paper, or two papers, would be pasted every morning on a board. For people who could afford the paper, you could stand up and read it. Next. After the 60s, okay, here is a reinforcement that comes from audio unity, moves on to audio visual. We started with a black and white TV, but never mind. I'm just recalling a few of the shows that brought India, that shut down India on Sunday mornings. There's practical curfew declared all over. No person would be working, whether you are a maid or whether you are a driver, it doesn't matter. We can all see it for 1 hour. Many people who had never read these texts and heard only excerpts were now reinforced authorities. My maid gives me lectures on biking. So, and when I asked her where she can't read a single word, she said, "Well, uspe dekha na, Ramayana mein dekha na." That she saw when she was young and she remembers even now. This has been a process of integrating and educating. This has also been a side effect of this medicine is that while it got people more interested in the mainstream religion, it created a school or a group of thought that X is superior to Y and led to hardening of stance. Next. Then hum log Bunyad, incidentally, if you are interested, okay, that's another example of how the official media would take over. I mean, I've just given a few examples. It's not only viewing or representing the viewpoint or the culture or the thoughts of the central organ of government, but also views terribly against it. Rajini, Priya Tendulkar, Ulta Pulta, remember, was it? And recently Satyabhay Jayate. I must tell you the story of Satyabhay Jayate. I had just joined in Prasar Bharati, and we found that the Sunday morning programs were so lousy that I can't talk about it. And I had seen Sunday morning programs of the type we just saw. So then came Amir Khan's proposal. And as usual, Doordarshan went around in circles. Their pride was that they had asked Amir Khan to make this public service series. Amir Khan wanted to make it. After that, he had his own style of functioning. He's a very interesting person to handle. And then, having spent about 3 crores per episode, 3 crores per episode, which means 1 crore per half an hour. DD's limit is about 8 to 10 lakhs per half an hour. So it was obviously 10 times more, so DD couldn't handle it. They felt hurt that Amir had gone off to star. Amir Khan came over and Star came over and found that since they had exceeded their budget, they needed to recoup some of it. And it was the first admission that the Doordarshan network has a far greater outreach than anybody else. Was when the Star officers and Amir Khan came up and said, "Chaliye isko batwara kya hai? Let us go in for simulcasting." Simulcasting means you show it, I show it, and we go in for a revenue sharing formula. But this one came only after we went through our tantrums. First they said, "We can sell you the program, you pay us 1 crore. Mama better. First of all, he walked out of us. And the solution we came back finally was, he walked out of the meeting, we walked out of the meeting, he came back, all sorts of things went on. And the minister was getting a little nervous with the new CEO. Ultimately, I told him, "I don't know, we'll manage." They came down to 50-50 sharing. The only advantage of 50-50 sharing is, I think we got 70, because our reach was much more. And Star TV got much less, the originators. That is one of the, but as if you recall, behind this business experiment, each episode of Satyabhay Jayate was crafted with a lot of punch, with a lot of thought and research. Next. Then we come on to popular culture. On popular culture, the skies were opened up in 2000. Actually, it starts with a troublesome gentleman in Calcutta, I can't mention his name, who files a suit against the IMD ministry, saying that you can't control the airwaves. He had a cricket thing to sell, and leave it up, right? He had a cricket thing to sell, and IMD ministry and Prasar Bharati were not willing. So he took them to court in 1996-97 series. The courts ruled in 1996 or 7 that airwaves are the property of the nation. What a beautiful judgment, and you are only the custodian. It's like a chowkidar who feels that he is the owner of the house. So your performance is that of a custodian. Once that was described, once that was clarified, Doordarshan had within its ambit certain bands called NDTV, which were programs. These programs went and linked themselves up to channels in Dubai, and the rest is history. We have now these 850 channels. But if you look at their role, instead of taking everything in a very negative light, through whatever we soaps and serials, reality shows, we have managed to polypack Indian culture. I am not passing any judgment as to whether polypacking of culture is good or bad. I am only making a factual observation that if anything has to sell, it has to sell through polypacking, Bollywood packing of that culture. And I noticed that when we came up to the opening and closing ceremonies, and this chap called Bharat, the producer, the creative director, insisted that he would put thin tube lights on sitars. I told Bharat, you go and talk to the classical musicians, then break the sitar in your head. Actually, when he got into operation and we explained the choreography and theme, everybody fell in line. Then came the next part. Each classical artist or dancer wanted to know how much time we gave. And when we explained 45 seconds, 110 seconds, we thought everybody would beat us. Ultimately, when we explained that there are so many aspects of Indian culture to be taken, that people actually came in for 1 minute, 1.5 minutes, did their performance and go out. So that was a fast-moving, non-boring, non-sleepy, non-hyperactive, quick packing of Indian culture, and it passed the test. Completely passed. These are some of the macro ideas where it becomes a common platform and it's going to become more and more as we move along. We are now getting interactive. All TV stations have started putting in YouTube and Twitter messages down there so that the program can generate its own feel of its popularity and its pluses and minuses. It's very complex management. I've gone to the studios and seen. It has helped in the spread of literacy and knowledge, not only to the public broadcaster, but even to the private ones. They have also taken upon themselves. We are in fact trying to urge the private broadcasters to adopt the corporate social responsibility model, under which big companies would be able to spend a lot of money on CSR funds, known as corporate social responsibility funds, and be able to spend it in the direction of public messaging, national messaging. It's helping citizens participate in governance. Next. These are some of the programs. I don't know if you ever get to see it, but it's reasonably popular in outside metropolitan cities. Gyanvani, Gyandarshan, they are hosted by us but created by Ignu and others. Next. Again, another thing urban India is hardly aware of, that Rishi Darshan is the longest lasting show perhaps in the world. Its popularity is so much that even after total cable digitization, people simply break all laws. I'll give you an example. I went to Uttarakhand to check up on our facilities after the calamity, and I asked them that what's happening, because with digitization, the entry of medium into the what is called the nodal point. These are called head ends. From the head ends, the MSOs take it up. the multi-service operators, they take it up. They give it to what is called the LCOs, the local cable operators. So you don't have much of a freedom to show. But when I asked them about this discipline, they said, sir, discipline chodiye. Between 4 and 5, all by popular demand, all the local cable operators plug out the main system and put in Krishi Darshan. Because their clientele wants Krishi Darshan. So no laws of the land can come up in the face of a public demand that has withstood the test of time. Next. This is one great victory that we look upon with pride, that some legislation has taken place thanks to excessive public interest or public focus on a crime that was going on unnoticed. Acid. Try to go and buy acid now. You won't get it. How many thousands of lives have been destroyed by the free sale of acid? And until the entire media, from the public to the pro-government and anti-government, all got together, and this is one of their small victories. Let us hope the system functions. It doesn't break down like rationing. These are again 3 examples to show to you how adroitly the media could be used and how the media would choose to position themselves. The excesses of rich brats, especially in towns like Bombay and Delhi, have become so unbearable that it was only the media that could run after them and keep them in check. The BMW case is one example. Jessica Lal was the experiment with which NDTV decided to show its mettle. During discussions with Pranay and others, explained that all the leitmotifs, all the instruments that NDTV was using were not Indian. The candle is not an Indian cultural item. Diya is. The reed is not an Indian cultural item. The garland is. But they used reeds, candles and everything taken from the West, and everybody kept and placed a candle and lit a candle, just as they had seen that the same way candles were lit when Princess Diana died. It was an aping of that situation where reeds were placed around the gates. But anyway, by playing on cultural motifs and others, the fact is, Jessica Lal remains a case where the press proved that it is more powerful than anybody else. Ruchika Gehotra, the swagger of the senior bureaucrats and IPS officers who thought that they are beyond reach, was brought to naught here. And coming back to some of the issues that have now become the text of all policy making, female feticide, child sexual abuse. Child sexual abuse was something we spoke about in whispers. Nobody talked in high decibels. Today, child sexual abuse has come into the mainstream of thought. Medical malpractice, because this is not still in the mainstream. Next. Now, we go back for a few minutes to trace the history. While we are lauding the press, it must be remembered that the majority of the print media comes only in full form after 70s. If you go back to the history of India in the 50s and 60s, it was Feroz Gandhi, the son-in-law, who was embarrassing the Prime Minister, the LIC case. It was the Prime Minister's own party, Pandit Nehru's party, that forced the Finance Minister to resign. If you go back to this history, you will see the Suranjan, the cash for questions. This cash for questions came up in as late as 1956. And Telco scandal. Next. 75, the rupture happens between the political class and the press. And 75 is taken as a high water mark when immediately after the restoration of parliamentary democracy and others, we have the Pune trust case, the first hit against the ruling systems in Bombay, the Bofors, the Harshad Mehta, Telgi, Satyam, and what have you. But between 75 and 95, or roughly divided this 20 years period, from 95 to 2010, actually from 97 to 2010, you find a period when both TV and print media compete with each other to bring out more and more public scandals. The Nanda, BMW mentioned Jessica Lal, Nitish Katara, match fixing, all of these started coming out, including the sting operation upon a leader who was taking cash. But from 2010, October, the history of India changed. Till 2009, September, till 2009 and early part of 2010, India was willing to live with Satyam, despite the fact that thousands of people had lost their savings. But 2010, something happened. The thread snapped. And after that, there was no looking back. The top side, the other side of this story is that it began whetting an appetite that we must need a head a day. This used to happen in the French Revolution. Last time where the guillotine would come down every day so that the mob could enjoy. Somebody has to go today, that sort of thing. This is not very, very healthy. There are groups, but the intensity, now Commonwealth Games, I have mentioned, 2G, Colgate, Augusta Westline, it will go on. Let's see, next, Next. Okay, this one is one of my favorites. I was asked in many places of the world, how is it that India remains the only democracy between the Atlantic and the Pacific? If you shut your eyes for a minute and look at the map of the world, leave out Europe, start from Casablanca, Morocco, go along the whole sub-Saharan belt, look at Saharan belt, go along the Western Asian, Northern Africa region, Central Asia, down to the Indian subcontinent, and go all the way up to the Philippines, you will find the common punctuator of democracy has been those tanks. Democratic class, despite all its differences, had such a common hatred for being ruled by the barracks that at no occasion, never was any occasion provided for coming out. Even if the exercises got a little showy, questions were raised as to why are we seeing so many people. There's a hypersensitiveness about it. This has happened, I did not emphasize on it. People have been threatened. But it's managed to ward off censorship and has won. A few exceptions, they are now history. They are now history. These three components of keeping the army back in its barracks and respecting them, giving them the due regard and respect, especially after Uttarakhand tragedy. There was an army that came up much more, according to reports, than let us say the civil administration. Next. But as we're ending this presentation, we have to admit that the fourth pillar of democracy, other than the legislature, the executive, and the judiciary, the fourth pillar is also collapsing. This is a source of worry to all of us. Media monopolies, corruption. Media monopolies is what is called cross holdings. Every major media group is moving in the other direction. I know one media group that owns TV, many TV stations, in several languages, owns an English language newspaper and some Hindi newspapers, Marathi newspapers, controls the MSO and LCO, that is cable and other networks, has its own dish TV. It's complete control of all the verticals of media. There are other groups that are moving in the same direction, from the print to the electronic to further developments including the new media, new and social media. The other backward integration has also begun, where you have anyway, I won't go in for such great examples. All I'm saying is that media monopolies have started appearing, and if no probity or no citizens check is put on this, we may land from the frying pan of bad governance to the fire of media monopoly. So between the colossus and the leviathan, the choice is very thin. Corruption. Corruption, I need not emphasize. My friends in the media know about what I'm talking about. There are newspapers that just give accreditation cards and say, "Oh, on your keep and get me advertisements. No salaries." How do you expect the man to live? This is exactly what the British did when they gave those lousy papers and said, "Vasool karke lao, we'll see. I'll give you the rights over the Kauji of 4 or 5 villages. You do what you feel like." Politics. The ambition of most media heads, I'm not talking all, is to enter parliament. I don't know how many you have from here. Everywhere this is happening. So the dividing line between media and its better-known executive and legislature is breaking down. And witch hunts. Once they get wild after someone, there is no rationality. I can say at the cost of whatever anyone feels like, that one of the witch hunts I know personally was about a CVC, Central Vigilance Commissioner, called Thomas, who was practically hounded out from his post. Thomas may be a foolish person or a simple person. I know Thomas was not dishonest. He had a case flung on him by his colleagues and others in intra-colleague rivalry in the Palmering case. But we know, you know amongst your society, I know among my society who's corrupt and who's not. But the way he was hounded out was a sad story. So witch hunts. Next. And now we are moving to another trend where you will get convergence of all media coming in, and the entire paradigm of media will shift. Every newspaper has now a digital version with a photo or something attached. There are many people who don't buy the newspaper, simply click open the website and see it, web page. Every web page tries to get in for a backward integration. What is happening is, ultimately we are all finding, people who are dealing with the media, that the most fluid instrument we have at our command is the mobile handset. In the mobile handset, the numbers have gone up to 850 million, has come down to 780 million, it doesn't matter. Active sets, activated sets, for which you have payments and regular communication, may be in the range of 700, 750. But that's more than half the population. Now, where we are heading is that we are now moving to the mobile generation. I mean mobile in two senses. A generation that is always on the move, and that includes old people like us. We reveled at the fact that when the computer became a personal instrument, until then the computer was a large fixed instrument. You go to the other university, you will still see it, and very slow in processing. But with the chip and other miniaturization, the computer became a personal instrument, personal computer, PC. Very soon you will have the laptop, very soon you will have this LED screen. But right now, the way it's heading, everything has to be in a handheld mobile. Question is, can the mobile give you that comfort of the eyes? Answer is no, but it serves a purpose. You don't have to go back and open a big clumsy newspaper. It serves its purpose. So you have something between a mobile and a laptop and a notebook. It's called like tablets and all that. Last week the news was that tablet sales in India have crossed mobile sales. Between the mobile and the tablet, they follow the same principle of broadcasting. They follow the same principle of telecommunication. We are now standing at about 700 million potential customers. We have to stream it. There are two ways of doing it. One is using the broadcast bandwidth, and the other is to use the telecom bandwidth. Fact remains, I won't bore you with these details. Exactly 5 years from today, news will not come to the publisher, news viewers will not come to the TV and the news would have to run after the viewer. And a viewer would have the luxury of seeing it on a big screen or playing on a big font-sized home computer, perhaps only on Sundays. So that is one development that one needs to keep in watch. Everything is now integrated into, from the songs, you don't need, frankly, you don't need an iMusic, you can open your, any mobile set can have it. So the mobile is turning out to be a new paradigm that we have to learn how to handle, the mobile and the tablet. Any mental block or revolt of the mobile or tablet, that I can just take a call, you can get away, but ultimately we are moving in a direction when everything is going to come up. I have a particular experiment coming up in the next 6 months. It is called DVB-T2 or Digital Terrestrial Technology. We'll try it out in Bombay first. We have terrestrial transmitters. We are trying to get something of receptors into the mobiles. It's like a pen drive. If you attach that, it's called dongle, you'll be getting the airwave straight in, the recast straight in. Question is, how many channels will we getting? What are the channels? We are going through the economics of it all, whether it will be saleable, but it has worked in many other countries. If it clicks in India, we now put another channel of communication other than newspaper, telephone, cables, satellite, and we open another front, that is to the mobile. I see everything converging, from data to news, to computer, to sound, music, everything converging in a mobile. With these few words, I've taken a lot of your time and patience. I hope we've been able to go over the subject and bring forward to you some of the brighter aspects of the media. Thank you very much for your patience.
We have the lights on the stage, please. Well, that was friends, please don't leave. We have a very, very important kind of a speech left for us. Speech from a very brilliant scholar, for which we have all waited with bated breath for so long. Thank you very much, Jawhar Sircar, Chief Executive Officer, Prasar, Bharati, for such an engaging lecture on the brighter aspects of media. We should remember this for years to come. We were awaiting the arrival of Professor Suranjan, the Vice Chancellor of Calcutta University all this while. I know he's a very busy man these days. He is on the panel for looking out for the prospective Vice Chancellor of President's University and a lot of other things. Finally, we have him here. I would request Swami Subramaniananda Ji, revered Secretary Maharaj, to kindly call on Professor Suranjan and flowers and books for him. Before we kind of await his presidential address, he requires no introduction, really, but a word or two about Professor Suranjan, one of the most learned historians we have here, academically as well as in his professional career as a teacher and a researcher. Suranjan has been a topper at the University of Calcutta, coming out first in the first class, both in his BA and MA examinations from Presidency College. Gold medalist from Calcutta University, later he went to St. Anthony's at Oxford and he got his DPhil, Doctor of Philosophy, in 1987, working on the communal rights of India between 1905 and 1947. He is a very well-decorated professor of history. He won a number of awards at Oxford, the Herbert Memorial Prize, the Ramakrishna Memorial Bequest, the Frere Exhibition for Indian Studies, all the research fellowships at the St. Anthony's College, Oxford, so on and so forth. The list goes on and on. At home, he is a very, very regular participant at learned conferences and seminars across the country, has, at least I know of, 11 books, innumerable publications and research journals, credited to Professor Suranjan Das. And of course, he is also part of the Indian History Congress. He was president of the Modern History section of the Indian History Congress in 2003. He is a very regular visitor to universities and academies across the world, imparting education to the students, so on and so forth. He's also part of the National Archives of India. So that, in brief, is Professor Suranjan Das, the president of this evening. May we request Professor Das for his presidential address, please. So, Professor Suranjan Das for his presidential address.
Well, I shan't dare to say anything more after the address by Jawhar. Swami Subharanandaji, my other esteemed Swamijis from Ramakrishna Mission Institute of Culture, distinguished members of the House. Could I first say a very big thank you to Ramakrishna Mission Institute of Culture for enabling me to be here. It is always a personal pleasure and a personal privilege to share the dais with Mr. Jawhar Sircar, whom we all well Jawhar. I remember those days in Presidency College when Jawhar introduced us to the joy of the student life. I hope you remember those days. And since then he has been a model of striking a fine balance between administrative expertise and academic expertise. I don't know how he does it, but he has done it, and it is a model that needs to be imbibed by all. When I first got the card and I agreed to be present today, I was struck by the topic that Jawhar has chosen, brighter aspects of media. We all know that there is an intrinsic relationship between the broadening of democracy and the broadening of the base of mass media. But it's also true, there have been a whole range of critics who have argued, despite the outer connection between broadening of democracy and broadening of mass media, there are also inherent contradictions between the form of democracy that is prevalent in the world today and the mass media in operation, the points which are the task to the last part of the presentation, to which I will come back later. And immediately when I came across the title, I was struck, how does Jawhar think about it? And I was immediately reminded of a very pertinent quote of a very famous philosopher. And Jawhar, if I can refer this quote to you. The quote runs as follows: Pandits are always blaming TV for making people stupid, movies for desensitizing the world to violence, and rock music for making kids that drugs and kill themselves. These things should be the least of our worries. The main problem with mass media is that it makes it impossible to fall in love with any acumen of normalcy. There is no normal, because everybody is being twisted by the same sources simultaneously in the media, unquote. But at the end of the day, Jawhar has convinced us that there are brighter aspects of the mass media, and as I go back home today, I'll try to question this particular received wisdom, the quote that we have learned for ages. Having said that, I would like to raise certain points with Jawhar's kind consent, points which perhaps will question some of the contentions that Jawhar has put forward very prudently. He has actually pointed to some of the positive contributions to the mass media, the portrayal of India through the representation of the cultural pluralism in the country, empowering of citizens, helping participation in governance, public sensitization of social ills, etc. And I was wondering why you didn't mention the Rajya Sabha and the Lok Sabha attendance, which I think have played very crucial role. I know, so that's why I said, which I think has played a very crucial role in making the people understand some of the real issues plaguing the problem of nation building in India. I would, however, raise certain points for your consideration when you refer to the packing of Indian culture. I will rightly mention to the Ramayana and Mahabharata. I would have like to draw your attention to a criticism that was voiced in some of the among some of the sections of social scientists, and I refer to some of the articles that came up in the EPW, where it was pointed out that the portrayal of Ramayana and Mahabharata through the TV serials represented only a partial portrayal of the Ramayana and Mahabharata. Ramayana and Mahabharata has many versions. But the version that was presented to us, the Durdarshan, was essentially what has been called North India based Brahminical representation of Mahabharata and Ramayana. If you go to the south, there are complete representation of Mahabharata and Ramayana in complete different form. So, at a time when there was a curfew in the morning through the portrayal of the TV serials, can we also go on to hazard to say that there was also an attempt to homogenization of the Indian culture through this particular curfew in the morning? So I think that is the point that I wanted to drive home. I am also little perturbed of the use of the popular culture. They are kind of popular and popular. Sometimes I am worried that when we try to represent the reality culture as popular culture, we are perhaps representing not the real culture but an imaginary and constructed culture. Only 2 months back I was struck by a news item. The news item was that a young boy of age 8 trying to imitate Amitabh Bachchan jumped from the balcony of the second floor of his balcony and lost his life. Now, the portrayal of Amitabh Bachchan jumping can be taken as a representation of popular culture. But that popular culture, when it is transmitted downwards, can have an adverse impact. So perhaps we also need to be little careful in trying to dissect what we call popular culture, whether folk culture is popular culture, elite culture is popular culture, the cinema, the imaginary world portrayed through Bollywood is a popular culture. That needs to be carefully thought of, and how it affects the popular psyche perhaps also need to be taken note of. The other important point, however, we have rightly pointed, I was particularly struck by the last section of the presentation, the breaking of the fourth pillar. We refer to the link between the media and the corporate sector, the corruption and so on. What I always, however, listening to you, what I was thinking is that the linkage between capital and mass media, or what may be called the media monopoly, I think this was an integral part of the history of the mass media in our country. So is it something new? There is a link between the corporate house and the mass media? Is it something new that the trend of mass, what you rightly pointed out, the media monopoly, is it something new now? Or would it be correct to say that there is a particular change in the quality of media monopoly with the introduction of the Indian economy to globalization? As I say, globalization has completely changed the contours of relationship between mass media and corporate capital, and also the contours of what you have rightly pointed to, media monopoly. So I was wondering whether the element of globalization can be built in representation. Finally, you also referred rightly to the digital age and the impact of the digital age on the mass media. Here again, what I was thinking, isn't it also true that while people like us, people sitting in the hall, we are all proud of digitization, we are all proud of our exposure to the information technology. But isn't it true that the way information age, the way digitization, way information technology is being introduced in our country, it is also exposing ourselves to a new type of social divide, which I would call the digital divide. The advantages that we are getting as a result of information age perhaps is denied to the majority sections of the Indian society. Indian mobile market is one of the fastest growing market in the world. But if we compare what percentage of Indians are exposed to the mobile market or to the digitized market, the fraction is very small, and that has just come out from a recent survey. So yes, we have to take advantage of the digital technology, but we also have to be aware that digitization also runs the risk of creating a new divide in our society. The final point, Jawhar, what could be a relationship between censorship and the creation of a good media, mass media system, or what you call the brighter mass media? Does censorship play a constructive role, a positive role? Or sometimes it can lead to a dialectical relationship between censorship and the development of a constructive mass media. And could I end with this, keeping in mind the way censorship rules do operate in a way to control the mass media? I'm reminded here, Jawhar, of a famous quote from Edward Said, and I end with that quote. This is what Edward Said said of the mass media. For, like all modes of communication, television, radio and newspapers observe certain rules and conventions to get things across what it thinks intelligibly. And it is these, often more than the reality is being conveyed, and that shapes the material delivered by the media. I was wondering to what extent Edward Said was correct, to what extent censorship rules can have an impact, positive or negative, in the development of a good media system. Once again, thank you, Jawhar, for enlightening us on a side with which people like us are not always acquainted with. Thank you very much. But we are all proud that with Jawhar Sircar Affairs, a new age has come, a new turning point has come in the history of Doordarshan, and we do look forward that this turning point will lead to a brighter future for Doordarshan and for the country. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, it was a great pleasure having in our midst Jawhar Sircar, CEO of Prasar Bharati, under the presidency, of course, of Professor Suranjan, Vice Chancellor of Calcutta University, for this very engaging evening. Thanks very much for being a wonderful audience. Please come again. Thank you.